All right, people, good evening. Hope your Friday evening is going well. And we've got some college football tomorrow, so I want to go over a recommended viewing schedule for Seahawks fans. Going to go over some games that have some players that I think are of interest. What I can say about this week in general is the early slate is not great. The day gets off to a pretty lackluster start. Some teams that I would like to watch are playing on obscure networks like SEC Network and Big 12 Network that a lot of people probably don't get. So some of the teams that I would really like to watch, like I think there's what is it, Arkansas versus Mississippi State. That would be fun. KJ Jefferson versus Will Rogers, but most people won't get that game. If you do, then honestly, I would recommend watching it because that should be fun. KJ versus Will Rogers. But assuming you only get major networks and only have access to major channels, can't watch it. So let's go ahead and take a look at what we do have here. The morning has a lot of games, but none of them do that much for me personally. I was just looking at the slate, and there's two 9 o'clockers that are okay. Michigan versus Indiana on Fox. Michigan, they've got Oluwatimi and they've got the kicker Jake Moody, but it's not great. It's not the most interesting game. Indiana is not a great opponent for Michigan either. They're probably going to win by 4 or 5 touchdowns. So it's not that interesting. The other game would be Tennessee versus LSU, and the only player in Tennessee versus LSU that's really worth keeping an eye on to me is Hendon Hooker. But Hooker's becoming so interesting and so appealing as a Seahawks fan. That might be enough because LSU's a decent team. They're going to challenge Tennessee a little bit. They're going to make life hard for Hooker, and we might get to learn something about him in this game. So even though that's the only player who catches my eye in the LSU game, that's probably the best you can do in the early slate. So, yeah. Check out ESPN at 9 a.m. for Hendon Hooker versus LSU. And that's the best the early slate has to offer, unless, like I said, you have access to watching the Arkansas game, which, if you do, I would recommend that. I would recommend that. Will Rogers is a guy who I haven't talked about very much yet, but some people are starting to get enthusiastic about him. So give that game a chance if you can. But beyond that, once you move past the noon time zone and you get into the early afternoon games, you've got two decent ones. One's at 12:30 and the other's at 1 o'clock. So at 12:30, you've got CBS Auburn versus Georgia. And Georgia, they kind of speak for themselves, right? They've got the... I'm not a fan of Stetson Bennett yet. I'm not feeling that one, so I'm not talking about that. But they have the Van Pran and, of course, Jalen Carter. And honestly, it's Georgia. Like, they're going to have other prospects you might like that I just personally haven't really caught on to yet. So Georgia by themselves is interesting to watch, but Auburn is not a great opponent, so it's not ideal at all. The other game's probably a little bit better just because of Ohio State, 1 p.m. on ABC. Ohio State playing a not very good Michigan State team, which is a little bit of a drag, but Ohio State is still Ohio State. CJ Stroud alone is must-see TV. Then they have Zach Harrison and Ruggles, their kicker. And Ohio State probably has a couple other guys who are worth monitoring, even though they may not specifically fill any kind of niche the Seahawks have that is readily apparent to us at the moment. So Ohio State versus Michigan State, pretty good. It's another game that Ohio State should win by 4 or 5 touchdowns. But Stroud is worth watching in general. I think people are really starting to get turned on to him. But the heavy hitters don't come out until the late evening, the late afternoon / early evening, rather. We actually have one of the most interesting games of the year, maybe. 4:30 p.m. on ABC, we have Clemson taking on Boston College. Now, Clemson is Clemson. I mean, DJ Ulagalele, I think that's how you do it, is coming on strong. Brian Bresee, I think he's having some medical issues, so maybe not him. But they've got Trenton Simpson, my favorite linebacker in this draft. They've got Davis, the defensive end. But this is also our first chance to take a look at Boston College a little bit here. And Boston College was on my list before the season started because of Phil Jurkovec, who admittedly doesn't look like he's playing great right now. So it's not exactly going the way that we were hoping. But he is an NFL kind of prospect, so might be worth tuning in to see what he can do on Clemson. And they have one of my favorite left guard prospects, Mahogany. So given the fact that Boston College is not that good this year, this is going to be one of your few opportunities to watch them. So I would recommend that. So you add it all together, and Clemson versus Boston College is actually a really compelling game to me on a Seahawk fan level. So that would probably be the biggest game of the week, and one of the bigger games of the year if you take Boston College as credible right now. And some people don't because they're not playing terribly well, and Jurkovic's not, but still. Okay, at 5 p.m. CBS, across from that Clemson versus Boston College game, you have Alabama versus Texas A&M. I don't know if Bryce Young is playing, but even if he's not playing, it's not like I like him that much anyway. They still got a bunch of guys on that defensive line who I like. They've got Henry To'oTo'o. They've got Cohen, their left guard, and they've got their kicker, Chris Richard. So that is still one of the most compelling teams in college football to watch, even without Bryce Young. It's very important to keep an eye on that defensive line. You can see that we need some defensive line help. Henry To'oTo'o is going to be one of the better linebackers in the draft, I think. And we need a linebacker, period. So Alabama and Texas A&M, I don't want to completely discount them. They have a left guard that I like as well, Ogun B. As I watch this offensive line, I really am starting to feel like that left guard spot is something we're going to have to address. Phil Haynes just doesn't seem like he's going to be it. So Texas A&M has Ogun B. and worth watching. So that takes us all the way to 8 p.m. ESPN. We got Oregon State versus Stanford. Not great, but Stanford does have Tanner McKee, who I still kind of like. He does have problems. He does have flaws in his game. He's not somebody I really want to draft that badly or anything, but got a nice arm. He fits it into these tight windows. Every time I've watched him, he's consistently made multiple throws every game that have gotten my attention. And he's getting destroyed behind that offensive line. That they can't protect him at all. So you can't blame everything that's going wrong for him this year just on him, I don't think. So that is pretty much it for the late slot. I didn't see a whole lot else. And yeah, that's going to do it for this week of recommended NCAA viewing. Again, not a great start to the day, but as we move on later past 1 p.m. into the 4:30, 5 p.m. slots, it's juicy. So at least definitely I would say try to catch that Clemson versus Boston College game and hope Boston College is on their best behavior and can make it a decent game. All right, I will see you guys later. Go Hawks. Should be on Twitch later tonight. Might post another video later today as well, by the way. I got some more stuff to push out there, so we'll see. Might be a late night upload, but either way, see y'all later. Go Hawks.